My name is Maddie or Books with Maddie, and today I'm doing a quarterly reading check-in. I think I've done one of these before. I think it was like the second or third video I ever filmed, like a quarterly reading check-in. I haven't done any wrap-ups this year just because I have not read a lot of books this year, and so none of my months individually were worth wrapping up because I would have only had like 3 or 4 books each month. So I'm doing like a big wrap-up for January, February, and March in this one video. Just like a check-in, see where I'm at, see what I'm currently reading, and what I finished so far this year. I have been in a giant slump this whole year. I just have not been able to read at the same pace that I was reading last year. I think I kind of overdid it at the end of last year. I was really rushing to finish a lot of goals, and I just think it was too much. And I've set less goals this year because that was just unreasonable. So I have only read 10 books this year, which is kind of stupid. Because I've technically read a lot, I just haven't completed a lot. A lot of books for school I'm like almost done with, but I just didn't have the time to complete them, and I like did the assignment for them, so I don't have any reason to complete them now. So I might mark them as DNF. Most of them I'm like 80% of the way through, so I think it's fair for me to count them as read. I think I'm gonna do that because I just don't have an interest in continuing to read them, and I'm literally almost done with them, so why would I waste my time continuing to read them if I don't have an interest? And I pretty much know what's going on and what happens at the end, so like I think it's fine. So we're gonna go through those DNFs completed and currently reading for January, February, March. Yes, okay. So first we're gonna talk about books that I have 100% completed, and I'm gonna do them in order of when I read them. So first we're gonna start with January. So also, some of these books I will have talked about in my last video, which was what I'm reading this semester, and I went through all the books that I read through that I'm reading this semester for college. And some of them I will have said that I didn't read them in that video, but I will have read that by this point, because I think I filmed that video in like February, and I just got around to posting it now, so heads up, timeline's a little off. But let's start in January and see where I'm at. I haven't been on Goodreads a lot. I just found out that I'm 14 books behind schedule. So you know what? I'm officially marking these books as read. These ones that I'm not quite done yet. I think there's like 2. So it's not that big of a deal. So let's start with January. I'm not going to do much in the way of summary because that will just like lengthen this video unnecessarily. So I'm just going to give you kind of like the genre and like themes. So the first one I read this year was In Holidays by Christina Lauren. This is a Christmassy romance time travel book where this girl gets stuck in a time loop until she can correctly live this week that she's in. That was a bad explanation, but it's the best I can do. I gave this book 4 stars. It was okay. I love Christina Lauren. I'm not a huge fan of like time loop, time travel stuff. It's really gotta be like a very specific way for me. I enjoy time travel and it intrigues me, but something about it here just like wasn't my favorite, and that didn't mean I didn't like it. It was just like that's why it wasn't 5 stars. It didn't really appeal to me that much, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. But 4 stars is still a great rating. Yeah. That was kind of a messy way to express my thoughts. I did cry. I'm seeing now that I wrote that I cried. I don't remember at what point I cried, honestly. Can't really think of something that would have made me cry in this book, but yeah, that's my thoughts on this book. And it's been a while since I read it, so that's why my thoughts weren't as comprehensive. Apologies for that. The next book I read was Illuminae by Amie, Kaufman, and J. Kristoff. This is a sci-fi book. I mean, it's pretty much just sci-fi. I guess there's a little bit of romance, but it's pretty much just sci-fi. It's multimedia, so it looks kind of like this, like it's like not written like a normal book, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was cool. It took me longer to get through than I expected. I thought this was, even though it's what, like 700 pages, 600 pages, I expected it to get through it really quickly because number 1, people like it a lot, and number 2, there's like giant pages that are not even like words. Like there's pages that aren't even word pages. There's words on the page, but they're not even, like, you could just skip by this page. I thought it would be a lot easier to read. Honestly, it took me a while. I gave it 4 stars. Honestly, not super memorable. I don't remember a lot about it. I kind of wanted to continue with the series when I finished it, but now I'm like, it's really not a priority. I don't really remember what even happened at the end. I know a lot of people cried. I don't think I cried, which is surprising because I cry a lot. Basically, this is about this place that got blown up or something, and everybody had to escape, and they escaped on these 3 giant spaceships, and that it's just their journey being in space, and there's like a crazy AI. The AI was a bigger character than I thought, and I wasn't sure about that. I also realized recently that I don't like books in space. Space is just not really my thing. So, yeah, that's probably why I didn't like it as much. Next, Again But Better by Christine Riccio. Another time travel book, weirdly enough. I think I got this for Deck of TBR. I think it was like randomly generated on my shelf because I can't imagine why I would have picked this up on my own choice. Even though I did at the store buy this through my own choice. I didn't like this book. Please don't hurt me. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. Yeah, I gave this 2 stars. I'm not sure if this is an unpopular opinion. I think this is very much a debut novel. Also, I am not a fan of YA/new adult contemporary, so I am not a good person to go off of for this book. I thought it was very much the main character was like, I'm not like other girls, and like, I just hate that trope so much. That's literally one of my least favorite tropes ever. I shouldn't describe it, I guess. This girl in college, she takes a study abroad trip to London, I think, and then she like really likes this guy, and she's like, do I tell him that I like him or not? And then time travel happens. It was like okay to me. There were parts that I just thought the writing was like kind of juvenile, and like I didn't enjoy it that much, and I'm pretty sure it's classified under new adult, so for the writing to be juvenile is like a little bit like you probably should classify it under YA. Yeah, I gave this 2 stars. It wasn't really my favorite. Please don't come for me. Christine is great. Love Christine's content and everything, but this was just like not really for me, and I know she's coming out with a 2nd book, and I can imagine that's going to be even better than this one. Next, I read 9th House. By the way, peep this boy. Wrong way. Look at that boy. I'll put him like that because, oh my gosh. Anyway, I finally read 9th House by Lee Bruger. I didn't have it for that long. I had it since Christmas, so it really wasn't that long. But, oh my gosh, why did I wait so long? This is one of the best books. I think this is the best book I read this year. I've only read 10 books, so that's not saying much, but I loved this book. I loved it. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars. Yes, I gave it 5 stars. 100%. I cannot wait for the next book. It hasn't even been that long for me since I read it. I'm already impatient for it. This is dark academia, magic, fantasy, spooky amazingness. It basically follows this girl, Galaxy, who is recruited into this Yale secret society of people who can, like, be magical. I'm bad at words. So she is part of this secret society. I am obsessed with secret societies now. I want to join one. If you know of any, like, literally let me know. I will do anything to join a secret society. So yeah, 9th House. Very good. Highly recommend. I know it's polarizing. I know a lot of people didn't like it. All I have to say about that is you're wrong. Next, I read A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. I read this for my World Literature After 1945 class, and I talked about this in depth in my previous video, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but it basically takes place in the Caribbean, and it talks about tourism and colonialism, and it's very, very good. It's only like 80-something pages, so if you're looking for something with that kind of theme to it, I believe it's a memoir, I would highly recommend it. It was very, very good. I think I gave it 4 stars. I'm getting very stingy with my 5 stars, gotta be honest. Next, Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. I do not have a physical copy of this. I read it as an ARC. What a lengthy book. Like, really lengthy. Should have looked at the length of it before I requested it for an ARC, because wowza. Like 600 pages, right? 623 pages, that's so long. It took me so long to get through this book. Very, very long time. I think this book is super unique. Very, very unlike anything I've ever read. And it's rare to find a book that is not like anything I've ever read, because I've read a lot of things. And so when I find something that's like, this is different, I can't even like compare this to another book. I can't even be like, if you read this book, you would like Plain Bad Heroines, because there's no other side. There's no other like, there's nothing to compare this book to, at least in my opinion. Nothing I have read has been like this. I definitely think that some people would really, really like this book. I think a very specific group of people would like this, and I think that's why the ratings are so polarizing, is because it sounds amazing, but the writing is so unique, and the way it's just laid before you is so strange. I don't even know how to summarize this book. It's horror, it's mystery, it's fiction, it's adult. What other words can I use? Historical, kind of, a little bit of fantasy. It basically takes place in 2 different time periods over this location, Bricance, which is a school for girls that was open in like the 1920s, and that it closed because people thought it was cursed and haunted, and then now people are going back to it to like film a movie about the hauntings and whatnot, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens. Wowza, a crazy roller coaster of a book. Pacing was a little weird because some parts of it were really, really slow. It also jumps around narratives a lot. Like, there's so many narratives, it's hard to keep track of the characters. Overall, super unique. I gave it 3.5 now that I'm seeing it. I can't even describe this book. That's the best post I can do. I will have my review linked in the description below if you want to read a more comprehensive description of my thoughts. But it's been so long since I read this that I can't even tell you what's happening anymore. It was just wild. That's all I remember. Next, I read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I also talked about this in my previous video, so I will not go into great detail with it. It was pretty average for a classic. I've read some pretty phenomenal classics and some pretty crappy classics, and this fell straight in the middle. It was pretty, like, intriguing as far as classics go, but beginning super slow, very hard to get into. It just really wasn't my cup of tea. It was okay. Okay, next, I read this short little guy, Death and the King's Horseman by Shawinka. This is a book that takes place in Nigeria. I also talked about this in my last video because I read this for my World Literature After 1945 class. This is a super interesting book. I think, oh, by the way, I gave The Scarlet Letter 3 stars. And I gave this boy 4 stars. It's a play. Sorry, should have mentioned that. It is a play, and it's very short. It is only 80 pages, I think, or no, 76 pages. Very short book, and it basically talks about cultural erasure and also colonialism. Reading a lot of books about colonialism right now, which is actually so interesting because I feel like I learned about colonialism the wrong way. These books are teaching me different things, and they're very, very interesting. The next 2 books that I completed, which are the last 2 before I get into what I'm currently reading, are Girls of Riyadh by Raja Al-Sania. Sorry if I mispronounced the name. This is such a good book. I highly recommend this. I read this for my Women in Global Religions class, and it is basically a recreation of Sex and the City, but taking place in Saudi Arabia. So under a completely different cultural narrative, completely different community, completely different circumstances, and it is so, so interesting. It is such an accessible way to learn about a culture that is oftentimes misconstrued and misunderstood and portrayed poorly in the media. So, very, very good book. I think I gave it 4 stars because I loved it. But I think I would have liked it more if I enjoyed contemporary novels more. It wasn't anything about the writing or the characters or the pacing or anything like that. This book was very, very good. It's just not the genre that I usually reach for. So, I'm going to give it 4 stars. But overall, a very, very good book. And I really, really highly recommend. I don't know why people don't talk about this book more, because I know people on BookTube would love this book if they actually read it. It's so good. So please, if you like contemporary, if you like romance, if you like learning about new cultures and things like that, I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. And then lastly, the last book that I completed this quarter of the year was Disgrace by Jm Cotesy, I think is how you pronounce the last name. Wow, what a book I didn't like. This book, I had such high hopes for. The synopsis sounded pretty good. It was from my World Literature in 1945 class. It takes place in South Africa. You can hear more about the synopsis in my previous video, but basically it was supposed to be about this professor who has to reconnect with his daughter, and it talks about the intensity of their relationship and living in a country with lots of racial complexities. It's post-apartheid. Very, very interesting time period. Bad book. I could go on and on for days about this book because I wrote an entire essay about it. Okay, the narrative of this book talks about things like sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, racism, written by a white man. What? The way that it was written was like this guy gave himself the go-ahead to interpret all of these narratives that he hasn't ever experienced. Can you imagine how much more powerful this narrative would be if it was written by a woman or a person of color during this time period? Okay, this won so many awards. It won a Nobel Prize for Literature, it won the Booker Prize, which is like the highest award in England, I think. Can you It's taking up the space of an actual narrative that could be important that an actual subjugated individual could have written. You know what I mean? Like, why is this a false interpretation of a actual tragic situation written by somebody who could never understand what it would be like to actually be in that situation? And the character in this book was so frustrating, was the worst character. And I will admit, Jm Cotesy wrote the character to be frustrating. It's not like he was like putting his own thoughts and feelings into this book. But what a piece of crap the main character was. I do not understand when authors are trying to make a statement with their book why they write their main protagonists as terrible people. I think it's a bad idea because it gets the wrong ideas across. It doesn't thoroughly condemn the ideas that you're trying to get across. Like this guy was literally a rapist, the main character, and like the author made him seem like really deep and like this really deep professor, and then like at the end he like kind of hinted that the guy was realizing his own ignorance, but it was not thorough enough. It did not condemn rape nearly thoroughly enough, and it just disgusted me to read this book. I do not think that it was worth it. Like, it was not worth this guy going through the trouble to write this book and possibly retrace narratives that are already written. You know what I mean? I'm sure there are books that talk about the same issues but are actually from the perspective of a person who could understand what it would be like to be in that place. And I just could not. I'm gonna stop now because I would go on forever if I had the opportunity. This was just an example of another white man taking up the space that an actual subjugated person could have, and I'm just kind of sick of it, TBH. It's another example of a white man using rape as a plot point to move his main male protagonist story forward. No. Disagree. Didn't like. The next two books are books that I had to read for class and didn't finish, Omeros and Dangerous Liaisons, or Les Liaisons Dangereux, whatever, in French. These two books I was supposed to read this one for my comparative literature course, and I was supposed to read this one for my world literature in 1945 class. I talk about them more in depth in my previous video. I gotta speed this up, so I'm not gonna talk about them much. Both of them were like pretty average. I'm like literally very, very close to being done with this one. I'm like about this much. I'm just gonna mark it as read because I'm never gonna finish it, and that would just be a waste of time. Why would I read a book that I don't want to read? Omeros, same kind of dealio. I was like around here in it, this was just a very complicated book. Both important books, and they talked about important things, but those two I'm honestly just gonna mark them as read right now because I read majority of them, and the amount of pages that I read, which is around 300 in both of the books, counts as an actual length of a book. Like, that's a legit length for a book. Both of them I would give 3 stars. This is gonna make me feel so much better about myself. Next, this is another one actually that goes in that same category, but I'm actually going to finish this one, For the Love of Man by Liz Plank. This is a book on toxic masculinity and a more mindful approach to masculinity. I'm almost done with it. I'm reading this for the class that I'm TAing, gender sociology. This is a very interesting book, and I talked really highly of it in my last video where I talked about the books I'm reading. I hadn't gotten as far in it, and I realized I don't really like the author's writing as much as I thought I did. It takes a very humorous approach sometimes. Like, she uses jokes and kind of lighthearted writing techniques to kind of alleviate some of the, you know, harsh and sometimes like hard to read topics, which I could understand a lot of people would like. That's just not my style. I don't think this was as academic as I wanted it to be, and also like halfway through the book it starts to get very repetitive. It feels like this book could have been a lot shorter. It doesn't feel like towards the end she's supplying as much necessary information as she was in the beginning, and so maybe that should have been, you know, spaced out a little bit more. And obviously I haven't finished it yet, but I heard a lot of the same comments coming from my professor and the other TA in my class and some of the students. It's just like, it was a lot in the beginning and then kind of died off as the book continued. So that's my only critique, but it is super accessible. Like I said, she takes a very humorous approach to a lot of these things, and she uses jokes and kind of modern commentary and stuff. So if you're looking for something like that, an introduction to toxic masculinity and masculinity studies, I would recommend this really, really highly, because it is very informational and can kind of help you to deepen your understanding of toxic masculinity and the true repercussions of it and consequences. Okay, next I'm reading Venus in Furs. I just started this book. I'm like 20 pages in. I need to finish it like ASAP, like in the next 2 hours, because I've read a discussion post and an essay about it by tomorrow. So I do need to finish this, and this is one of those ones where I probably will finish because it's only like 90 pages or something. I'm really interested in this one actually, because I realized this guy is the guy who like originated the idea of masochism. This is a wild ride. I did not know what this was about when I first, because there was no synopsis or anything. This is about masochism. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to tell you, because that's not my place. It's not my responsibility. So it's wild. It is a wild, wild ride, and I don't really know what to think of it yet. I don't have a lot of opinions. Next, Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This is a graphic novel. It's a memoir, so of this woman's life, and I've heard very good things about it. I'm not a big fan of graphic novels. I am about 94 pages into it, and I'm reasonably enjoying it so far. It's pretty readable. Graphic novels just aren't for me, so if there's anything wrong with it, for me, it's the format of it, which is just not what I prefer, and so it's not a critique on her as a writer or her story or whatever. That's my only critique, is that it's not written the way that I like it, which isn't legit. So that's it. Okay, we're gonna talk about some actual booktube-esque content. Look at this chonker. Stephen King, 11/22/63. Was supposed to read this in what, January? I've made pretty decent progress for being in a reading okay. That looks so lame on camera. Looking at it down from this angle, it looks like I've made quite an impact, but I genuinely am like only 25% of the way through. Am I enjoying this book is a great question. I don't know. It's time travel. Better time travel than In a Holidays or Again But Better. I'm enjoying this way, way more, because this is legit, actual, like, there are consequences for our actions, time travel, and I like that better. This is such a big book, though. I'm not used to reading books that are this big. So I'm working my way through this one, and I have an audiobook for it, so I'm definitely utilizing that, because that is helping me get through a lot of books right now. Yes. Okay. Finally, I'm reading King of Scars. I was waiting until I had Rule of Wolves because I wanted to read them back to back, but I started it this morning, and it's April 1st. I'm only 30 pages in, and I am loving it. I am loving it. I do not know the last time I enjoyed a book this thoroughly. I am just so happy to be back in this world with these characters that I love, and like, it's been so long since I've read a new Grishaverse book, because I keep freaking rereading Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, that I'm so happy to be back. Like, I so rarely read series. This idea of, like, coming back is so rare to me. Like, I don't know what that's like. So, to be able to read a book that I'm enjoying, and in a world that I know, and I don't have to be reintroduced to, like, these characters and this magic system and whatnot, is just so great right now, and I'm just loving it. And so I can't wait to finish this one up and get to Rule of Wolves. I haven't heard anything about it yet. I don't know anybody who's read it so far. So I'm trying to kind of stay off of Goodreads and Instagram and BookTube and whatever, because I want to form my own impression on this. But man, I am so excited to be reading this book. I am just adoring it right now. I cannot wait to get back into this book. I am just so excited. The one thing is, why on God's green earth is this book just a little bit taller than King of... Is anybody else having this problem? Why? I mean, okay, so this one I got from Amazon. This one I got from Barnes & Noble. Could that be it? Is that genuinely it? Like, they're the same publisher. Usually when they're the same publisher, they're the same size. So tell me why Rule of Wolves is just a tiny bit taller. I don't know why. It's driving me crazy. This, dust jacket is a completely different material as well. It's just, I don't like that. Not a fan of that. You know what I am a fan of though? This freaking hardback. What the heck? That is the best thing I've ever seen. I kind of want to display them without the dust jackets. Wouldn't that be sick as frick? Oh my gosh. I gotta start saying that more often. Sick as frick. Oh, that's such a good one. Okay. Look how stunning these 4 books look next to each other. Wowza. I'm keeping it like that for the foreseeable future. Anyway, that is the end of this video. This is probably pretty lengthy because it's literally wrapping up the last 3 months of my life. But I'm so excited to be back uploading on Saturdays or Sundays, whenever this comes out, weekends. And I have some really exciting things planned for next month that I'm very, very hyped for. So keep an eye out for that. But with that said, that is the end of this video. I really, really hope you enjoyed. Let me know what some of the best books you've read in the last 3 months are, and some of the worst books, and what you think of these books. Let me know if you've read any of them. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great week, and I hope you have a great life, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye!